Today, we're talking about the Brooks Ghost 11 GTX after 100 miles. 8.49 miles today, 9 minutes, 19 seconds per mile, having an absolute fantastic time, getting some snow miles in. What a fitting way to wrap up my 100 miles with a Brooks Ghost 11 GTX. This has been my first Brooks that I've run in, and it's been an interesting shoe. My initial impressions were that there's two foams in this shoe. There's DNA Loft foam in the heel and BioMoGo foam in the forefoot, and I like the BioMoGo. I like the stuff that's in the forefoot, but everything that's going on in the heel of the shoe, from the 12 millimeter drop to the extra soft foam that's back here to the large amounts of rubber tread, I felt all of this was working together to fight me. And so I had a hard time kind of figuring out what the shoe was about because I was getting really distracted. Every time I would put my foot down, I felt like the back of my heel was catching a little bit, and then also it was trying to like guide the way my foot hit the ground, which was a little bit distracting. I know I don't have a perfect form. I don't have the most beautiful stride, but this was definitely trying to make me do something my foot naturally didn't want to do. And whether it was correcting it or just getting in the way, I wasn't really sure. I couldn't really tell one way or the other, but I do know that it was distracting. And ultimately, it ended up in a shoe that kind of slowed me down. After 100 miles, I would have to say that the same still applies, although to a much lesser extent. And I wonder if it's because this DNA Loft foam that's in the back, it's a lot softer, so maybe over the miles it's compressed a little bit, and so the parts that were getting in my way were just kind of rubbed out or like smushed out of the way. That could be it, or I maybe am just accustomed to the feel now of running in the Brooks Ghost 11 GTX. In terms of the upper, I've run in this shoe in all sorts of conditions: wet, really cold, really rainy, and also very snowy. And this Goretex upper is just absolutely fantastic. It holds up really well. As you're going through some of the more disgusting stuff, you'll certainly feel your coldness on your feet, but I never felt wetness. And it was just amazing the way that this thing could just take a beating along the lakefront path and keep my feet nice and dry. So that part was amazing. But it's kind of all of that is overshadowed by the fact that the shoe is really still fighting me even after 100 miles. It got to the point where I felt like as I'm running in the shoe, I would try to avoid hitting the DNA Loft foam at all. And so I would try to land mostly on my forefoot, which was made more difficult by the fact that this is a 12 millimeter heel drop shoe. Now, I don't really think that heel drop is that huge of an indicator of how much I'll overall like a shoe or an overall shoe's performance. But when we start getting to the edges, like 4 millimeters or under, or more than 10 millimeters, I think that the heel drop starts to become something I have to pay attention to, or at least be aware of, because you're gonna feel it. And I definitely felt it here. In terms of the rubber though, the lugs on the bottom of the shoe, not that they're really lugs, but there's extra thick rubber on the shoe, so much rubber on the shoe. They easily could have shed a whole bunch of weight by reducing the amount of rubber on the shoe, but also it does, for a winter shoe, contribute to a lot of the good traction that I did have. But even then, I just felt like I wish there was a little bit less of it. The only one place that I'm seeing anywhere is right in this lower right-hand corner, or on the left-hand corner on my left shoe. This is the area where I always see the most wear and tear. I think there's so much wear and tear here because, again, that 12mm heel drop, and that's where like my foot is catching as it hits the ground. Everywhere else, it's hard to tell that there's any hardly wear on the shoe at all. If you look really closely, there's a little tiny bit right underneath the ball of my foot here, which is over a little bit further from where I normally see wear. So not by a ton, and maybe I'm just imagining it, but again, I think that as my foot hits, this thing is making me change ever so slightly. I could see why a lot of people that are just walking into a running store for the first time and getting a Brooks Ghost 11 recommended to them are really enjoying the shoe. Walking around in the shoe, it's very, very comfortable. I think it looks a little bit weird, like when you're looking straight down at your foot, because there's kind of like a shoe and then a platform. So you've got the shoe, and then there's all this extra rubber and midsole that sticks out far from it. So it kind of gives it more of a flipper like look when you look down at your feet. Like when you look at the shoe this way, you don't really notice it, but when I look at it this way, it becomes a little bit more prominent. So not my favorite shoe to wear around casually in terms of appearance, but very practical in terms of it is comfortable for walking around, and I do think it's because of that DNA Loft foam that's in the back here. So ultimately, for a winterized shoe, I think it's great. I do feel a little bit like I'm wearing a boot when I'm running in these shoes. And that, again, for a winter shoe, that's okay. My experience with this Brooks Ghost 11, the GTX version, though, makes me less likely to want to try another Ghost shoe in the future. But it has me very interested in trying some other Brooks shoes, ones that have more of just the BioMoGo foam, and maybe not so much the DNA Loft foam that's in the back here. And so the Brooks Launch 6 is becoming a lot more interesting to me because it's a lot of the things that I kind of like about this shoe with fewer of the things that I don't like this huge heel cup in the back. Will I keep running in this shoe? Probably not. This shoe's probably just going to get donated now that I've hit the 100-mile mark in it. It has served its purpose really well, but I also think that it could probably serve someone else even better than it could serve me as like the third winterized running shoe in my closet. So not a bad shoe, but probably not my favorite. I don't know that I'll get another one of these again next year unless they make some substantial changes, but it already being the 11th iteration of the Ghost shoe, I don't think that they probably need to change all that much for the demographic and the type of runner that they're looking for. That runner is just not me. So those are my thoughts on the Brooks Ghost 11 GTX. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments. I'd love to talk to you guys down there a little bit more about it. That's all I have for today. Thanks so much, everybody, for watching and making it all the way to the end of the video, and I will see you guys tomorrow.